This is the Outliers Edge podcast, where we champion the leaders who are shaping the next era of humanity by taking them to the edge of their comfort zone so that they can lead us to the edge of what's next. I'm your host, Niiamah Ashong. Let's do this. Hey there, Niiamah Ashong here, founder of Outliers Edge, where we champion the leaders who are shaping the next era of humanity. I'm also called to pull in one other thing here right now. I'm also the founder of the World Joy Movement, where we are really championing an idea, vision of the future of a world that experiences joy on a regular basis, a world that pursues that and chooses that in the way of in the way that they meet, in the way that they relate with one another, in the way that we co-create with each other. It's been a long time since I brought up the World Joy Movement. It's something that lives within me, and now I'm allowing it to live without me, if that makes sense, on the outside here. So we're playing this again in different ways, and we'll see how if any that impacts this conversation. I like to leave some space for that because I'm in a space right now and in a conversation with an amazing outlier who understands the interrelation between people and communities and how we can uplift each other and uplift the community as a whole in order to be with each other, but also to accomplish great things together. So Venia, Logan, I am really, really honored and pleased to be in conversation with you. It's good to have you here today.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. It really is very much so an honor. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for that. It's so interesting, Venia. I said, thank you. It's great to have you on the show. And I was there was something about that just felt somewhat off, to have you on. It's just I'm just glad to be in conversation with you. I'm really, we had a chance of meeting about a year ago. I don't know what it was. We met online at a conference in just almost the passing of ships. And then we had a conversation afterwards. And one of the things that about you that really strikes me is that from not only do you show up as a leader in the spaces that you're in, but you are both incredibly well versed in the subject matter that you lead, but there's also a continuity of you that is both refreshing and inspiring, and also and I say this in for me, it's a really good thing, intimidating in a great way. And the intimidating part for me, I say this from the standpoint of it was hard for me to hear intimidating the first time I heard it, but I love it because I look for those things. I look for someone that has something beyond what I have, and that gets me really interested. I'm oh wow, what a high level of integration, what a high level, you know what you're about. And it really feels like in every conversation, every experience I've had with you, you're in alignment with that. It's unapologetic, and it's also just natural. And so so I want to celebrate that. I want to just call that into space here, and let that live and breathe, because I don't know, it's something I think that's really awesome about you. I'm just really glad to be here with you.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I accept those words wholeheartedly. Yeah, I do like what you say about being intimidated as this notion of being a very good thing, of having something that is at once both intriguing and also kind of scary because it's not yet known. I think that's really good because it's just a very obvious thing of, I will now take this moment, step back, and realize that intimidation factor is something to learn more about. That completely changes my frame on that factor. I've heard I'm intimidating before. I think this is going to change the way that I look back on a lot of those relationships.
It's really fun to play with that idea there, because I remember the first time someone told me I was intimidating as an adult, and I went around to people. I'm you want this person thought I was intimidating? What's going on? I'm the most joyous person here. Can you believe he said that to me? And really, Venia, as a Black man growing up in America, when I hear the word intimidating, it came with this idea of I'm afraid of you, you know?
Yeah.
And as I started living life more and talking about it more, it turns out other people have completely different there's a neutral way of looking at the word intimidated. Probably the first time I've ever used it in this like neutral way, two-way person. So it feels really good. Like I feel like I've stepped over into a whole new like threshold for me. But when that moment happened, someone said to me, he's like, yeah, I'm like, of course you're intimidated. I was like, it stopped me in my tracks. Like, what? He's like, yeah, even your joy is intimidating. And at
Oh,
that moment,
wow.
I got it.
Wow. Oh, that must have been quite the encounter. How did you feel after that?
Yeah, to tell you the truth, so I had to take a pause myself, because I'm not often speechless, but in
Yeah.
that moment I truly was, because it that was the moment for me when I realized that intimidation was not a negative thing, and one and two, I think the biggest thing is like I felt free, and I recognize there's a lot of times of like my experience in life of choosing to go beyond fitting in and choosing to take on belonging and beyond. uh, it opens up this space of freedom in the sense of, oh wait, if even my joy is intimidating, I'm not stepping back on my joy. Like that's never going to go anywhere. And so even this, if even me in like what I think is like my like the nicest I can be, the like joy for me has evolved from that moment. But in that at that time, it was just like there was like a jolliness to it, right? Even if me, even in my jolliness is going to intimidate people, then hands clean, like what can I do about it? Like apparently I'm just intimidated, so let's use that let's use that for a reason, let's use that to an effect, um and make that powerful, as opposed to like spending any more of my energy trying to not come off as intimidated.
Yeah. Wow. This conversation honestly reminds me a lot of my own personal growth, if
Mm,
I'm honest.
yeah,
So I guess I'll just start.
yeah, please do, like let's go with it.
Back in 2010 or so, I was 18 years old and I had lived a life that I did not want in any way, shape, or form. I'm a transgender woman, and as a male, there was nothing about my life that I really enjoyed necessarily because I wasn't me, right? But I did have some privileges, you know? So when I came out, and I transitioned publicly, my school wouldn't allow me to use the female restroom, specifically because of this notion of power dynamics of like, oh, this cross-dressing male is entering into the bathroom, which was very not okay, you know? And there were women who would come up to me during that experience and just be like, you don't belong in here. This is a safe space for women. You're infringing upon that space. And I'm like, right, but at this current moment, I'm more vulnerable in this regard than you are, you know? Like I want to get in, use the restroom, and then get out as fast as possible. Like this place kind of scares me. And it was kind of that notion where when I attempted to fight with the university about it, they're like, they actually pulled me into the HR room and they're like, listen, we understand your rights as a transgender individual, but you're in Wyoming. Like there's rights, and then there's the culture willing to give you those rights. And if you want those rights, it's your job to advocate for and change the culture of those rights on the university. And I just looked at them and I'm like, my rights are my rights. It doesn't matter whether or not people know. It's your job to reinforce those rights, you know? But I kind of went overboard as a result of that conversation. And I went onto a YouTube channel and launched my whole YouTube channel. And I got like really bold about it. It completely changed my personality. I'm just like, no, this is who I am. And I called it at the time, I refer to this lovingly, and I'm not really too sure about that. Can I curse on this podcast?
You can just be you. I can't ask you to be you on here and then like we're like say, but these words are allowed and these words are not. So just keep being you, whatever's flowing out of you.
Yeah. Well, I say this lovingly in an academic factor. I call it the bitch phase, where when you, as a transgender individual, come into your own and come into your identity in your space, it's such an intense experience. You are doing every single step of the way consciously with practice. You are working on your voice every single day of every single second. You are choosing to dress in specific ways in order to highlight or to lowlight specific traits that you genuinely, really internally hate about yourself or love about this new identity of you. And as a result, you build this hyper competitive, hyper defensive, almost motherly feeling about yourself, where the slightest provocation causes a response that to everyone else is way overboard, right? It's super intimidating. And I call it the bitch phase. And I've noticed a lot of trans people tend to go through this, and they should, rightly so. And a lot of people are like, you're going to lose a lot of friends and family if you're following through with this. And it's like, right, but they're also in the midst of learning who they are. Who is to say that those friends and those family members and those conflicting relationships are really going to help them understand who they are? In some cases, it may pull them back. In other cases, it may catapult them into an identity that they have. It's about negotiation. None of that is neat and clean and orderly. It's super, super messy. And it just so happens, kind of looping this back, that in the course of my bitch phase, in the course of my online world, and in the course of walking into creating change, this massive LGBTQ summit covered in CEOs and executive directors, changing the world for queer identities, I was the youngest person in the room at the age of 21 in a room full of CEOs, and I had to learn how to use my bitch phase in a corporate context because I had realized that I had given away the power that the average white male individual is going to have in that circumstance, lost it even among women, had to fight for and get it back. And now I'm in a role where now I have hints and oddities of both roles. And I really had to understand and negotiate what I was doing and how much my share of voice in that room was taking up. And that was kind of the moment where I had learned if I wanted to be a giant in my industry, I needed to find other people to stand on my shoulders. And that was like the most critical part of this notion of intimidation. It's something that I still struggle with because I get on my soapbox, I take up the room. It's super, super easy for me to fill a room. And then I have to kind of think back and go, all right, share a voice now. I've taken over this room. What am I doing with this space now? What exactly is this intimidation giving me, and how can I use it? Yeah. There, done rambling.
Well, we're gonna have, hopefully we have more rambling take place here, because I personally am a huge fan of ramblings. Like a lot of other people like you to get straight to the point here, but we were talking earlier about like if we can get to a place where we have a divergent or emergent conversation, like we're really in we're in a good space. My hope for you as you leave here is that like you either learn something new about yourself or you learn how to apply something about yourself in a new way, right? And so that comes from the messiness of rambling. And you said a lot of different things here. I appreciate that I appreciate you taking us through a bit of this journey right now. The part that I'm feeling, well, not part I'm feeling, but one of the things that really struck out to me was when you were talking about like being in a bitch phase, and like I picked it up as like two things. Let me see if I was getting it right. One was that there was one part of it, it's like I'm here to be powerful, but the way that you describe it, at least using the word bitch phase on it, like that's like it feels like it was like I'm actually a little bit more forceful than powerful. Am I getting that right there?
In a lot of ways, yeah. And that's how it's going to manifest,
Yeah.
But then there's this recognition of, okay, but why though?
Yeah. So I love that there, just to kind of create that distinction. And then the second part that I got from that was like, while you're in the practice of all these things, like it was messy. It was not like it wasn't the cleanest thing. It wasn't like you went from one identity to the next and just like boom, I'm done. There was a messiness that was involved in that. And I would love for you to speak as much as you can on that, because I think I think there's something here, because ultimately at the end of the day, like Outliers Ed is like saying, hey, instead of you being like trying to be squished down into the norm, squished down into average, and or made to feel out of place because like you're different and you like wherever you are. I tend to think of Outliers up and to the left, but you could be anywhere, right? You're just like you're just not a part of the norm, right?
Yeah.
Like instead of looking at that as a negative, it's like the whole thing is like how can you think of it as something that gives you an edge, you know? And yet while it's fun to be able to say, you know, you should show up every day exactly as you, and like let's see how we can turn that into something real. You're speaking about the real part of the process, which is like, look, I am a giant, and like along the way I crushed some towns, you know, or whatever the equivalent is. So I would love to just spend us a little time in that messiness with you, and then let's continue down the journey as it goes along. And I appreciate you bringing it all in, because I was like, this is like, how real is this? Like, thank you.
Yeah. It's funny that you mentioned that. Specifically the notion of I'm trying to figure out exactly the best way to say this. So as I was going through the bitch phase, there was a lot of mess involved, and there were some towns crushed, there were some bridges burned, there was some conversation that needed to happen, and there were some friendships that kind of had to take a break. Like I've gone back and I've repaired those conversations before, things that we never thought could be repaired. We burned this bridge, we would never talk again, and now 5 years later, we laugh and bond over it at mimosas every Saturday. I'm thinking of a specific friend that I actually have. But one of the reasons I think it's messy, learning who you are, is because a lot of people don't understand that the way that identities are built is I'm trying to stay out of the weeds, but this is just how I think. So this is gonna happen. There's this theory called learning schema theory. It's a psychological, and you're just smiling and being like, yep, there it is.
You could be hearing me. I think I was on mute for a second, but I'm just like, just let us know. Like if we're to go into the weeds, like we're going into the weeds, like we have the space for it. So just go for it.
But I'm quite known for being able to connect the theory and the principle to like these concepts. But the way that we think and the way that we learn who we are as people is really a very, very simple process. And it's called learning schema theory. And a schema is essentially a set of differences that we use as effectively logic gates, yes or no, in order for us to learn who we are over time. So, and I'm going to use trans people here in this experience as well. This also occurs among virtually every minority culture. This is in large part how like individuals learn who they are not. And effectively, learning schema theory begins with an object. You have a car, right? And then you can know whether or not that car is a Ford or a Mazda. And then once you know it's a Ford, you can know whether or not it's a Colorado or a Focus, right? So you learn, and there's this internal system in your brain that says, yes, no, or let's learn more. And it's that let's learn more that's really, really critical. So if you apply this now to who you are as a person, I, as a child, wanted nothing more than to ice skate. And my father looked at me and went, that's not a feminine activity. You don't want to ice skate. And I thought ice skating is cool. There are now 2 sports included in that: hockey, which is a hyper masculine sport, and then figure skating, this hyper feminine sport. And I wanted to go to figure skating. And my father said, no, instead, we're going to put you in judo. So we did. In judo, when I went in, my brain didn't say, do I like judo? It said, you have to like judo. And it was an immediate, no, this isn't me, but I have to do it now. And suddenly it becomes a chore, a responsibility, something that is external to me. I've already decided that for my identity, the yes-no schema, is this something that I enjoy, is a solid no. And because my father set me down this path, this schema of learning all of that, everything in my environment from that point forward was always no. Nothing in my identity said yes. And as a result, I was lost. I had no idea what I was. I had no idea who I was. I didn't get exposed to the things that I enjoyed or the things that I loved. I just had to do my best to fit in an environment where I had 0 yeses. And identity fits that way all the time. And just imagine how messy it is once you have a teenager or a kid who has never actually gotten a yes, never gotten to explore it. How messy is it going to be the second they do find that yes?
All right, there's a few different things that are coming in here because I'm imagining that as a teenager, and also as an adult, you know, just the period of like what you do when you actually do start exploring the worlds of yes for you. Am I getting that right here? Like it's so like, and so when I there are a few things that are going on as you're saying that. One, it's like there's a lot that's being repressed in like the no world, right? And as you're saying that, I'm also thinking about like, oh, like how did that show up for me in my life? Like, I have a 2-year-old now, so I'm thinking about like all this it's all connected. I'm like, okay, what do I want to continue or not continue down the path? And then there's this component here of like, there was something that was playing through my mind around like, oh, I wonder now like where I am being that no for myself. Like, you know, like my parents were that for me beforehand. Like where in my like learning schema. I might like make sure I'm using the language properly. If I'm not, let me know. But like how am I learning from this schema? Like where I'm consistently putting myself in places of no's, rather than giving myself a chance to explore the yeses. So I'm playing with some of that as you're talking right now. You just took us to a place where like it started out with like skating, went into judo, took you like, if I'm getting you right, from that no to judo, and just being consistently in that environment of like, this is how you should be, this is how you should not be, like, and having to live in that world of no. You then took you through years of navigating a no environment. And then so take us here. You left us kind of like an open space of like, imagine what it'd be like to like reach like your teenage years and reach that. Share with us like what's the next thing that's come into your heart to either share directly related to that, or like where would you like to take us in here? Because I'm enjoying where the conversation is flowing.
Yeah. So I guess just kind of a direct continuation, because I think that the next step is really, really important too, is when you don't find no's, your emotions will tell you. And you will start to build this notion of feeling restless, feeling like you just can't remain in this skin, right? And then it's that notion of travel and loss that forces you to find those yeses. And if you follow that notion, you're going to take yourself to places you never imagined you could. And I like to call that grapevine identity. It's just like grapevine communication, right? Where you have a structure where people are like, this is how we communicate, this is how we talk, this is how we get things done. Like a company has an email string. But in all reality, the ideas aren't coming out of that structured communication. They're coming out of the random, completely ungarnered conversation that's happening among your employees at the bar, right? Communication happens at the bar. The progress happens at the bar. And it's this grapevine communication. I heard it from this person who did this person who did this person. This is a good idea. Let's bring it in. And you can do the same thing with identity as well. If you're living in a structured organization of no's, the only way for you to find that yes now is for you to leave the environment where all you're getting are no's. So for me, that was taking refuge in online forums I really should not have been on. 4chan, 99chan, 8chan, precursors to Reddit. I took solace in online communities where being a transgender individual was permissible, even if unacceptable. And it was one of those areas where I'm just like, okay, I like to cross dress. This is a thing that I like to do. I don't know why I feel immense shame about it, but I feel comfortable. For some reason, my brain is telling me this is a yes. So I took some time to go learn about that. And over time, I realized this wasn't a sexual thing. I would cross dress, I would get dressed in female clothes to live my life, to mop the floors, to like do laundry, to read books, to do my homework. It was just natural. And I went onto that forum and I asked, like, this is what I'm going through. I disclosed to other people and I'm like, what is this? What's going on? And I got this post that said, you're not a crossdresser. Like, you're just straight up trans. And I looked at them and I'm like, what is this term right now? What happened? I Google it, I see the definition, brain inside of me, yes. And the second I got that yes, that was the moment the bitch phase started, because I was so covetous of this term, this definition. And I was so gung-ho about this in-group of transgender individuals where I had received reciprocity, connection, a feeling of affiliation and belonging. It had gone through the process of community building at lightning speed. I went from extrinsic reward, look at my pictures, to intrinsic value. I have now discovered a yes, and I want to explore more within a minute, a Google search. And it was that notion of yes that sent me on this tirade that said, so my entire environment that I've lived in has all been no's. Let's just start tearing it all out. And I use the word tearing rather specifically. Like, I completely changed my life. I planned for every step of the way. I was highly intentional with designing a life that no longer included any of those no's in it, without any regard for whether or not those no's carried a value. And that's why it was messy.
Now I'm feeling this here. So like you went through this place. I love that you're intentional in your words. So as I'm hearing you here, there's nothing that's like a quick response or anything. I'm like I'm being with you in this space here to see. So what some of the things that were flowing through me as you were saying here was just like the word choice of tearing it out. Right. It was just like it's like everything is going. They often say like don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. You're like, doesn't matter. Like we can just do the whole bathroom again if we need to, but like everything's going. Right. Am I getting the sense of that?
Oh yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Okay. All right. So there's actually something you said a while back ago that actually really struck me. And I think I'd love to talk about like what came after the bits phase, how you navigated that, because I mean this is it. We're like it's super interesting. I have like Outliers Edge, there's bright colors, there's like my smile that's a part of it, all that stuff there. And there's a really empowering and positive spin to everything. And like doing the work of being you in the world and choosing to be you both proudly and like make that like a place that you start things from as opposed to a place that you have to like navigate around. It's not easy work. It's not necessarily the most easy thing. So I'm really enjoying this conversation here where you're just like, look, this is the path, like this is my path. And I had this whole thing. One thing you said to me that really got me was it was a while back, but I had to bring it in because I actually am curious about like what happened after the bits phase and then what you're up to now. All right. But you talked about like mimosas every Saturday. And you said like I went and I repaired some of those bridges. And I don't know why, Venia, but like it just like it hit me. I was like, yeah. And I'll speak to some of the like the thinking why. It wasn't a brain logical thing though. There was something that happened internally. So I'm not gonna actually get to the core of it in this moment. But there was something there where I feel when I'm talking to people and we're really at the cusp of stepping into our power, into our dreams, into like basically in the language of this conversation, into like a world of like yeses from now on only, like intensely creating yeses for ourselves. there's like lingering feelings of like, well, what if I leave someone behind? Or what if I'm no longer going to be like accepted here? Or what if like this thing here? What if like, and the idea, like, it's just like a very simple thing that like came up because the idea that not only like it may happen, you know, but the idea that like, and if it does happen, don't worry. It doesn't like it doesn't mean that it's done for good. It just might need some period of time where there's some space. And should you choose to come back to it, you can repair it. But now repair it from the place of this, I'm in the world of my yeses. And like I've come back. Turns out I was a no to how that was like the way our relationship was, but I'm not a no to you overall, especially if we can create something new together. Let's take it from there. I'd love to just like hear a little bit here. I'd love to hear how you think about it, how you went about that repairing. It really opens up a world for me in terms of like places that we can navigate, places we can go, and not being afraid of like losing something in the short term to allow yourself to go on the path that you need to go on, and then choosing to see where that path decides to take you, or if you want to come back and pull back some things that were left behind. So I'd be really curious about any thoughts you have on that.
I think in truth, it boils down to something very, very simple. A lot of the reasons people struggle to rebuild bridges they've burned is because they are not ready to accept the fact that a reckoning has very little to do with the person they hurt and everything to do with not letting themselves feel said reckoning. In a lot of ways, when relationships break and you say no, and you break down that relationship for your own personal benefit, for your own reasons, no matter how amicable it is, feelings are going to get hurt. Things are going to happen. Bad breakups happen. And bad breakups are amenable. They are something that you can get lifelong friends from. But also consider that as difficult as that is, that's like easy mode, because this is about a relationship or a breakup. Other things are about highly tangible, effective environmental effects. Like, I lost an entire family for 7 years. It wasn't just a breakup. It was, you are no longer my father. All of my family members no longer believe that I am worth anything, so they threw me away. Every single question, every single time we would meet, the first question they would always ask is, how much money are you getting? Because that was the sole level of value that we would receive. Until I reached a moment where I was able to have this conversation of like, hey, listen, this is a completely new person here, totally new identity. But I also recognize that that person before existed and hurt you like really bad. So can we have that conversation? Can we have that talk? And it was a recognition that I had to reckon with my prior self in addition to this individual. And that level of discomfort did not allow me to say the things I needed to say. So the main tool that I used to fix this is radical candor, not just radical candor, right? Not just like, hey, I'm going to tell you things, but radical candor explicitly to remove emotional mitigation. I cannot mitigate my words. I have to be harsh and I have to be mean. They have to be harsh and they have to be mean. Tears need to flow. Time needs to stop. We need to sit in this moment right now. And yelling is important. It's critical in this experience, because what other way are people going to get that emotion out if they are prone to mitigating? They could go the radical candor route, but it takes practice. It takes learning how to do that, how to have those skills. In the absence of those skills, the best action that they can take is anger. And we have to accept that. And you can build that bridge by doing so.
I am so happy you brought all these things in here. Like I said, I had no idea where this conversation was going to go. I'm really pleased that it went here. Thank you for playing this game in the way that you decided to play it with us here today and bringing this conversation. We are at the place where we have to start wrapping up our conversation. I get the sense that like there's a lot that we can continue to unpack. There's a lot of different things we can do. But I also know that you and I are talking about ongoing collaborations, continuing to be in each other's world and continuing to build out from there. So I appreciate you today sharing more about you and your process. And I feel it's just so relatable in terms of like just like the process of choosing an identity. I like of adopted. I don't know. It's just so relatable. I as you're talking, I'm thinking about just Nemo to Niiamah, like even just like the name change and the understanding of actually this is what happened inside of me in order to make that come to life. So I just find it incredibly relatable, and I thank you for that. Let's do this here. Let's talk. We just jumped in. I didn't give you like a lot of like we had space, but we didn't have the space to like hear about like what you're up to in the world, like and so on and so forth. So why don't we conclude on that note? Like how have you built from these past experiences? Like it's clear that you have various tools. You look at the way that people look at themselves and the interplay with other people. It's clear that you have like this a high fidelity and expertise in things. Tell us about what you do in the world. Tell us about like whatever you'd like to share yourself from a professional standpoint or personal standpoint, and then we'll wrap up from there.
Absolutely. So kind of taking forward this notion of identity and a hyper focus on understanding how we work in combination with other people in our communities. I built a company that is based on this actually, called sociallyconstructed.online, which is a consultancy first, where I help people build online communities that attract audiences to them, and then galvanize those audiences into communities that will keep those organizations running, not as an umbrella or someone to control that community, but as a node, a resource in that community to help them thrive. Then after that, I take the community management skills and the expertise and the community that we built, and I turn that into a learning feature as an e-course for community managers and executive directors looking to build the communities themselves. So that's what I do. If you want to reach out or if you want to connect in between this, because I am absolutely on board with further collaboration, 100%. I am absolutely on board with collaboration, 100%. I would love to see you either in my own Discord, which you can find on my website, sociallyconstructed.online, or on Twitter at Samantha Venia. Yeah, I focus a lot on neurodiversity on Twitter there. So we could easily continue the conversation there.
Fantastic. There's like, I'm personally looking forward to like jumping into the conversation you're already having, and just continue to play. Thank you for choosing to think the way you think. Thank you for choosing to be who you be. Thank you for choosing to bring that here in the space. Because again, it's like there's a lot of ways this conversation could have gone. So we're gonna end this conversation with a question I like to ask here. A lot of times we'll ask like, what's a message that you could like leave to your past self? You got to go back 20 years and let them know. I'm actually really interested right now in what I'll call the time capsule question, which is like, if you in this moment, Venia, like could leave a message right now for a future Venia to come back to later on, what's the message that is like really present for you right now that you want to make sure that you never forget, or that like you can really stimulate yourself with in the future?
Yeah. I think what I would send back to the prior me was, if you want to be a giant, find someone else to stand on your shoulders. Because I spent so long trying to be a giant on my own. And the time capsule that I would send forward to future me, that is a hard one.
Yeah.
I would definitely say it needs to be more emotional in nature. Like, if I've ever found time to settle down, enjoy it for a little longer and then get back up again, please.
Thank you for that. With this here, just let that live. That's for you. Come back to this at some point, and just remind yourself here. Venia, it's been an absolute pleasure. I'm looking forward to seeing more about seeing you in more spaces, going out to socially constructed online and playing with you and collaborating and beyond with that. Thank you for being who you are. Thank you for bringing it out here, and thank you for like living on your edge and bringing that into our space here. Anything else to say before we wrap up for today?
Thank you for holding this space. It is so wonderfully on brand, very unique. And I think it needs to exist and it needs to manage. And I look forward to seeing and being a part of it growing as a community.
Take that in as well.
We're just getting started. Take 10 seconds to think about your greatest insight from today's conversation. And if you're ready to go and bring this to a deeper, more applicable level for you, come and join us in an upcoming masterclass. Go to outliersedge.com/masterclass to be coached live and to bring your aspirations, your goals, and your challenges and have them handled in real time. This is high flame, high impact, high transformation. Go to outliersedge.com/masterclass and come experience your next level of leadership.